Hello and welcome to the video on how to minimize cognitive load when setting remote learning. Today I'm going to introduce you to the cognitive load theory, and I'll also give you strategies that can help reduce the cognitive load when teaching remotely. First of all, the cognitive load is very easy to understand in the sense that everybody has felt it at some point. This is the situation when something becomes overwhelming cognitively. To help you understand, let me show you this on short-term and long-term memory. So short-term memory is the working memory. It's the cognitive powerhouse dedicated to rapid processing, and it has a limited capacity and can be easily overloaded. The human brain only has so much space to process different ideas at once. Long-term memory has a far greater capacity, but it requires that information come to it through the working memory. If the latter is taxed beyond its abilities, the information will not transfer through correctly and therefore won't be available to be retrieved at some point in the future. So when you receive information, the brain sorts this into schemas or categories based on what you already know. And when incoming data doesn't fit nicely into pre-existing schemas, it gets discarded. A lesson with too much going on causes overload. And an overload means your students will probably not understand and will not engage with the task. So now let me go through the three types of load that exist. First of all, there is the intrinsic load. So it relates to the inherent complexity of the topic and the prior knowledge of the students. In reality, teachers may have little control over this factor. However, they can alleviate that complexity of information. To help you understand, for example, understanding the workings of the human respiratory system has more intrinsic load than knowing where the lungs are situated in the human body. Then there is the extraneous load. So it refers to the teacher's instructional methods, the way the teacher presents the information, and it requires teachers to eliminate the unnecessary. This is the part that teachers have the most control over. For example, it can be adding beautiful pictures on the slide that actually do not have any pedagogical purpose. This is extraneous load, for example. And finally, there is the German load. It relates to the process of transferring information into the long-term memory through the construction of schemas. So according to the cognitive load theory, the sum of these three types of load must be less than what the working memory can handle for learning to be truly effective. So now I will present some strategies to reduce cognitive load in a classroom and in remote learning. So e-learning has this advantage that it avoids cognitive overload in part because the learning is to some extent self-paced. If, for example, in your lesson you record yourself, students have several chances to listen to it again and make sure they understand the concept. So at least there is an advantage with the current situation for teaching. So I'm going to go through a few strategies. First one, a very important one, is to break things down. Sometimes, because we are specialists of our subject, we forget the complexity of it and we may skip some steps that would actually facilitate the learning of our students. On Google Classroom or in your PowerPoints, give instructions through a list of manageable steps to guide students through the lesson or the task. And this will also give them a sense of achievement. I would say make sure as well you consider the amount of new information that you include. If necessary, a large amount of information can be broken up into several lessons. And complex topics should be broken down into bite-sized pieces. Dividing information in this way enables a student to fully understand and process one part before moving on, thus improving the transfer to long-term memory. If you use PowerPoints for your lessons, each slide can be one step towards the task. This is a good way to break it down for the student. Second strategy, consider the order in which you teach the concepts. Make sure you tailor the lessons according to students' existing knowledge and skill. Ensure that the learners master the fundamental principles before moving to complex processes. This way, the new content is understood and retained because it is included to existing schemas that are already in the student's long-term memory. Third strategy is to use direct guidance. Don't be afraid to have lessons that are teacher-led, because this way you avoid misconceptions. So I recommend that you use direct and explicit guidance and avoid letting students discover the information themselves. Especially with remote learning, as you are not there like in a classroom to straight away fix any misconception. It's very important that you use direct guidance. Then model and explain. Make sure you use lots of worked examples to model how to solve problems. If you have a visualizer, this is great because you can think aloud and model for them. And make sure you spend a lot of time explaining and demonstrating. This is very valuable. I would recommend recording yourself. This way you can explain in detail to students, and also people can concentrate better sometimes when they're only listening. Students have reported that they really enjoy lessons like this. Next strategy is to make your content readable and to be concise. To ensure your content is readable, make sure that you write as clearly as possible. Make it engaging so that students want to read your slide. If it's too text heavy, they are likely to give up. When instructions are unclear and not concise, we do tend to lose interest, so keep that in mind. Then remove visual clutter. This is a way to reduce extraneous load. Images, links, colors, and fonts are all valuable design elements, but only if you use them wisely. For example, if you use them for color coding, this is great because it will enable students to better create connections. However, too many bright colors and images and font types, that will cause overstimulation and overload. Visuals are good only if they facilitate the processing of the information. So I would recommend that you always ask yourself, is this image needed on the slide? If it's not, just don't include it. Then be consistent with your design. When we're familiar with a design or certain content, our brain has to use less processing power to take it all in because we've already processed it so many times before. By being consistent and reusing similar elements or templates in your design, you can decrease the cognitive load for your students. Finally, maximize the German load. You can use mnemonics as learning aids to help learners retain more. You can also use concept maps to encourage students to retrieve information and make connections between concepts. And also, if you are a tutor, I would say that it would be it's great to remind your students how to reduce extraneous load in the classroom. We can be in charge of this directly, but because in the current situation, because students are at home, they cannot, they don't know how to reduce distraction. So as tutor, it would be good to remind students to try as much as possible to find a place in the house that is quiet in order to do their work. If they work in an office, a little study that is quiet, they will work better. They need to make sure they find a place that where they will not be distracted by others or by the media or by noise. So as a tutor, this is what you can do. Just remind them of these little things that can help as well. So while you're creating your next lessons, keep these considerations in mind. It makes a difference for the learning of our students. Thank you very much for listening. And if you would like to find out more about how to reduce cognitive load, just email me. I'll be very happy to help. Thank you.